You are playing every role wrong in Marvel Rivals, and it is holding you back from reaching your true potential and getting that shiny rank you so desperately desire, or hell, just killing your whole vibe while playing the game altogether. Things that you hear all the time on YouTube, like make sure you stay with your team, deal as much damage as possible, and don't die on support, are all good things in theory, but the basis of what you've learned the game on most of the time is actually wrong. But don't worry, I've played and coached every single role and found the most common mistakes each and every one of them makes to not only highlight what you are doing wrong, but also what to replace it with to play better and carry more games as a result. Let's get right into it. Starting off with all Vanguard players out there, the biggest mistake everyone is making comes down to teamwork and positioning. Many players correlate playing with their team as staying stacked as a full 6 at all times, but this could not be further from the truth. Just because you are next to everyone else on your team does not mean you are just going to win the game by default if the enemy isn't. And sometimes it is the single reason why you are losing games. You might be rolling your eyes at me right now, but I kid you not, the tanks that I see in Celestial, Eternity, and One Above All struggle with this concept of taking an off angle. They will see characters like Mantis and Hela off doing their own thing on another lane and their brain will just explode. They don't know what to do. So instead of assuming that stacking is the answer, tank players need to think about how to set up their team based on the characters that they are on, as well as the map that they are on, not just making a specific kind of space every time. Right now, the most popular composition in ladder is Doctor Strange with the Magneto, sometimes with the Groot. In other words, the classic double shield combo. This combo is super powerful just because it is so easy to run. It is simple, front to back gameplay that just focuses on giving DPS as much time as possible to find picks. Right? Well, wrong, because it's much deeper than that. Sure, stacking your Strange and Magneto is great if, and only if, your DPS have better frontline brawling potential or can break the shield faster than the enemy can. Think DPS like the Punisher and the Winter Soldier that have crazy high damage values compared to characters like Hawkeye, Hela, Star-Lord, Namor, any melee character, the list goes on. So if you play the Strange and Mag combo front to back against a Winter Soldier, but you have a Hela and Star-Lord, are you going to win? Probably not. Not only do you have worse shield break, but the enemy Bucky is going to hook a free pick every single fight and you're going to hate your life and probably flame your teammates too. Instead, your approach has to change because the reality is your randoms are not going to swap. In this situation, you as the Magneto player need to take someone on an off angle to force the enemy to move their tanks around a bit and fight in a disadvantageous position. This could look like splitting your team into 2 groups of 3 so that your Hela doesn't have to worry about 2 shields in her face and instead has to worry about just 1 or none at all, allowing her to actually be useful. At this point, you don't even have to run Magneto or Strange anymore. You can simply just start delving into other types of heroes, utilizing characters like Hulk, Venom, and Captain America to counter the strategy of double shield and utilize your team's strengths while capitalizing on the enemy's weaknesses. To be honest though, as the Mag player, sometimes taking that off angle isn't even necessary. Sometimes all that you need to do is to look at the DPS that is taking the off angle and give them the bubble so that they can win the duel, and then they can start focusing on the rest of the frontline war with you. If you watch any top 100 scrim by just hovering over the history in the leaderboards and you watch a Magneto, pretty much every single Magneto is doing something like this with their bubbles, especially with characters like Magic that have been played a lot more recently. The easiest pitfall to find yourself in as a tank player is that there is one way to play the game and that it is already figured out. Do not autopilot on tank. It is causing you to lose games and take space that doesn't matter consistently. Instead, create the space your team needs based on what they are actually playing in the map that you are playing on, not what you think your team needs most of the time because of the meta that you see in ranked from day to day. The other mistake too many Vanguard players are making is that they take way too much damage before the fight even starts. Just because you have 600 plus health does not mean that you should be taking half of your health pool before the fight even starts. This gives your supports a lot less agency to find opportunities to carry in the middle of the fight and gives the enemy their ultimates much faster. On top of this, it also forces you to use your cooldowns in ways that you really don't want to. For example, if you are playing Magneto like we've been talking about and are consistently taking way too much damage, you are probably going to be bubbling yourself constantly, instead of having bubble for that off angle that we were talking about earlier, or for your backline to keep them alive against the tickle monster himself, Black Panther, if the enemy so chooses to use him. It goes the same way for if you are on the Hulk too. Taking too much damage just means you will never actually get to dive the backline, and you will lose out on a lot of value by default simply because there is nothing you can do without dying. Instead, you need to think about how you can beat the map with your team composition instead of just how you can beat the enemy team. How can you path as efficiently as possible while minimizing the damage you take, allowing you to take the fight with as many resources as possible? This looks like pathing around the environment, utilizing cover to mitigate damage, and forcing the fight on an off angle or on point to demolish the enemy team. With the Vanguards out of the way, let's now talk about the Duelists and the two main ways that players are messing up this role, and that is not understanding how to truly apply pressure and not understanding different matchups and how to play around them. Starting with pressure, what this means is essentially clearing out space for your team through shooting specific targets without needing to kill them. The reason this is an important skill to highlight is notice how I do not kill the Hela here. I simply pressure her off of her power position and give her a lot less options to roll over the rest of my team. There are two problems that manifest from situations like this though. Either A, players don't really even think to shoot the Hela to begin with and are so focused on killing supports and tanks that they just let her tap the entire team for the entire fight. Or B, they do pressure the Hela, but they do so in a way that gets them killed, either by going in too deep trying to thirst for the kill or just pathing incorrectly, all things considered. Fixing problem A is easier said than done, because sometimes you can't really just shoot the Hela. And sometimes the Hela is in such a bad spot that it is actually better to not pressure her at all and to just kill the enemy team instead. This is more common in lower ranks where the Hela player might not really know what she is doing. The way that I like to think about whether or not I should or shouldn't pressure someone is to put myself in their shoes and think about whether or not I would be able to get literally anything done on their character where they are. In other words, is it actually a good spot to be in, or am I just there because I can live? I know it sounds really simple and easy, but in reality, a lot of what hero shooters come down to is thinking about the situations to begin with, which many players just aren't. Now, to fix problem B, where we are pressuring the Hela but are going too far, it really comes down to practice and being aware of your health and the enemy Hela's team. Sometimes you can push for the kill if you are the GOAT and do a ton of damage early on in a duel, since the Hela wouldn't be able to get back in time to the team. Other times, the enemy team might be so tunnel visioned on your team that you can simply just get away with it, but the higher that you go, the more likely that the kill is going to look really nice to you, but the healing is already flying through the air, ready to turn the duel in the Hela's favor. The way you can get better at this specifically just comes down to practicing and trying to locate where everyone is placed before you approach the Hela to take your duel. The better you get, the more you can layer on your understanding to the duel, with everything we just said, on top of just using your supports to push your duel that much further in your favor. Also, this might seem obvious, but duels aren't always against Hela either. The higher you go, the more likely this matchup is against two Namors on the flank. Duels can really be against anyone at any time, but the concept of approaching them is still the same. All you really have to do is get the person off of the power position, and that's it. Alright, aside from pressure, we also have to talk about matchups and how they are going to influence each and every game you play. Even if you only play a couple of heroes, it is really important that you understand when it is time to play each of them as a duelist main. Sometimes it all comes down to the map, while other times it is important to recognize when enemies are countering you. Let's look at a hero pool of Punisher, Namor, and Star-Lord. All three of these DPS can play into each other if you understand the matchups, no problem, but some are better into others. For example, Star-Lord has a really easy time overwhelming the Punisher, but a Punisher can deal with Namor from afar with consistent damage without being pressured by his Kraken turrets when played into an uncoordinated ranked environment. Then the triangle is finished with Namor's turrets, making it really difficult for Star-Lord to deal with him and get into the backline. When you understand what the enemy DPS are trying to do, it makes it much easier for you to decide what you should be doing in each and every fight. And that is what I mean by understanding matchups. A character like Star-Lord, for example, has so many identities that it is really important that you pick the right one for the job. And every other DPS is the same way. Which identity is best depends on what you have and what you are up against. So one game you might want to jump a Punisher all game, while another you might just want to deal with the turrets first and then pressure the backline. DPS is a great carry role, but it is also incredibly deep. With these two problems fixed, you'll be climbing in no time. Finally, we have made it to the strategists, and the way you are playing them wrong comes down to how you utilize their ultimates and doing too much healing instead of damage. A lot of support players learn their role pretty fast in Marvel Rivals, but there is a lot more nuance to it that you may have been missing out on through learning this quick. It's common knowledge to think about how you will use your ultimates before you use them. For example, as Luna Snow, when I see that they have a Bucky ult or a Storm ult, I know that I want to hold my ultimate for that and use it when they have it. The common pitfall most supports fall into is that they just use their ultimates right when they hear the DPS ultimate. The correct play to make is to make sure that you actually need to use the ultimate before you pull the trigger. There are a lot of moments where that Bucky just completely airballs his ultimate and hits 0, dying instantly, like a lot of moments. I'm not lying. This opens up opportunities for you to use your ult aggressively, or to turn a fight that should have been lost if a teammate trolls and gets critical early in the neutral engagement before ultimates have been put in play. The same thing goes for if the enemy team's supports use their ultimates. This is not an invitation for you to pull yours out too, unless you cannot run away and are forced to fight. If you don't have to fight, this is an invitation to laugh in their face as your whole team waits them out, and then you retaliate with yours or just play the neutral. The same situation seen in a different way is that you can just avoid using a support ultimate if you have a character that can counter it with their standalone kit. Think of like Doctor Strange blocking a Hela ultimate, or Loki clones meat shielding a Psylocke ultimate. This means that one of your support ultimates could keep getting cycled to win fights if your team is all on the same page. Fixing this common mistake might seem small, but with how overpowered support ultimates are, you legit will climb entire ranks with this advice. Aside from misusing your ultimate, support players focus so much on healing that it causes you to miss out on ultimate charge on top of kills. This is where I introduce you to the concept on support that dealing damage is healing. Think about it like this. If you are on Loki and take 3 seconds of your time to go and kill that Hela without a bird on the flank, now you have effectively mitigated all of the damage that she would have done to your team had you not killed her right there and then. In fewer words, that damage you just did effectively healed your team 1200 health. Damage doesn't have to just be in the form of kills though. Supports can also pressure DPS off of angles really easily by just simply shooting them, and shooting enemies on long angles before fights happen allow you to get 5 to 10% of your ultimate to supplement the charge of your healing on your team. By implementing more damage into your gameplay, not only will you create more value on the scoreboard, but you will also get your ultimates faster and carry games on support as a result. And with that, we have figured out exactly how everyone is playing Marvel Rivals incorrectly. Recall that on Vanguard, it all comes down to supplying your team with the space that they actually need, not autopiloting, and doing so efficiently so that you don't die before the fight even starts. On Duelist, it comes down to applying pressure while not going too deep and dying when you don't need to. On top of this, understanding matchups and playing the right character for the right situation will make the game so much easier. Nothing is worse on DPS than picking Namor into Punisher, Bucky, and shooting a shield all game. Trust me. Change your playstyle and you'll have a lot more fun as a result. Strategists are all about not autopiloting your ultimates and finding ways to weave in damage amongst your barrage of healing to charge your ultimates faster and carry your team with cheeky picks. And finally, the cherry on top is to stop looking at the damn scoreboard in order to flame your randoms, and instead flame them based on the mistakes we talked about today, or flame yourself for not deadlifting every single game. And with that, if you want to watch me live, I will be streaming right as this video goes live on YouTube here, as well as on Twitch at twitch.tv/PazSwagger. And hopefully this video helps you all reach your ranked goals. But until next time, I've got to peace out and Paz out. I'll see you in the next one.